have a total of 11 mentors participating today, 4 of whom you'll be hearing from momentarily. And the way this is going to work, if you want to learn about them, please do check out our Meet Your Mentors document. Janisha is going to share the link to that, and you can see bios for all of the mentors that will be joining us. Okay, so how is virtual speed mentoring going to work? So there are 4 25-minute rounds and 4 groups of mentors. So right now we're at the beginning of round 1. The rounds will take place simultaneously on Zoom and on Slack. So round 1 is only on Zoom. Slack will start with round 2. So we'll have the Q&A here on Zoom with our first group of round 1 mentors. And then after that, you can slide over to Slack to continue to engage with that same group of mentors. Or you can stay on here on Zoom for the next group of mentors. So just a few, and the mentor schedule, Janisha will also post the link to that so you can see which mentors are going to be on Zoom and Slack at which time. Okay, so just a few ground rules. If all of the participants would please keep your microphone on mute, except for the mentors when it is your turn to speak. And as I said shortly, this is going to be a moderated mentoring session. So you'll be using the chat box for all of your questions during this session. Please note we are recording it. And should the meeting shut down for any reason due to connectivity or anything, then please just try and join back in a minute and we'll pick up where we left off. Okay, I want to introduce our amazing mentors for this round. There are 4 of them. I will say their names and then I'm going to let each of them give a speed introduction of 1 minute. So with us we have Mary Burns, Mark Ginsberg, Heather Simpson, and Ali Krupar. Mary, would you like to start us off with your speed introduction?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, good. Well, the most important thing to tell you is thank you for inviting me because it made me actually get out of my pajamas. So I appreciate that. I work at Education Development Center. I'm what they call a senior learning technologist, and I also I advise the Millennium Challenge Corporation on many of its projects. For those of you that don't know, it's another US-based donor that funds education projects. I've been involved in education since 1984 as a teacher, educator primarily, both in the United States and all over the globe, really. And I kind of work at every level, from the policy level to the writing and research down to actually still going into classrooms and working with teachers. So thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Mary. Mark, would you like to go next?
Sure. First of all, I hope everybody's doing well and please stay healthy. Not the easiest thing to do in the current circumstances, particularly psychologically. My career is kind of a mixture of the categories that Adrian just mentioned. For almost 20 years, I was a university professor, but as part of that time, I directed an Institute for International Studies in Education and was involved in a number of projects, some funded by USAID, some by World Bank and Asian Development Bank, etc., some by foundations. And then in 2004, I took a decision, I'm not even sure I can remember why, but I'm glad I did, to step out of the academy for, as it turned out, about 12 years. I first went to Egypt as involved in a USAID project, then came back to Washington and spent 10 years working for what started out as the Academy for Educational Development, but before I retired in 2016, had become FHI 360. And during that time, I had an opportunity to do some teacher education policy work, but a lot of monitoring, evaluation, and research in a range of countries, from Afghanistan to South Sudan to Malawi to El Salvador. And so I've had a variety of experiences in some of the kinds of organizations that I assume colleagues online are thinking about becoming involved in.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Heather, would you like to go next?
Sure, thank you. I'm Heather Simpson. I am currently Room to Read's Chief Program Officer, and Room to Read is based in San Francisco with operations in about 16 countries right now, and then other offices around the world. And I lead our Literacy, Girls Education, and Research Monitoring and Evaluation team at Room to Read. I, as an undergraduate, studied anthropology and then joined Peace Corps right out of college, doing hillside agriculture in Honduras. And then after I left Peace Corps, searched for about 8 months to figure out how to continue working in development. Not an easy answer to that question, but I was thrilled to get an opportunity to join a small family-run business called Juarez and Associates. And I learned research, monitoring, evaluation there in the education sector. And that's where I met Mark Ginsberg and other colleagues on USAID funded activities that we were all partners on. And I'm thrilled that I still have many mentors from those early days that helped shape my career. And after Juarez and Associates, I went to work at American Institutes for Research, also doing monitoring and evaluation, and then sort of evolved into project management, new business development, proposal writing. And then after that, went to Save the Children, where I was on the education and child protection team there and met Adrian and a lot of other fantastic colleagues. And after Save the Children, went to Room to Read. So that's sort of been my meandering career, but I am thrilled that we do have such a tight-knit community, and I continue to partner and collaborate with folks who I've met 20 years ago. So it's great to be here with all of you.
Great. We're happy to have you as well. Allie.
Yeah, thanks for again inviting me. So I have two hats right now. I am a senior specialist in learning research at Save the Children in the Department of Education and Child Protection. And our team is really a unique team that focuses specifically on research as well as supporting monitoring and evaluation. So we're able to really draw out a lot of learning beyond program outcome evaluation. And that work, my focus is really on lifelong learning in education and emergencies and well-being programming. And then the other hat is I am an adjunct at American University in predominantly methods courses, but very focused on monitoring and evaluation, data-driven decision-making, things like that. Now, for my path to get here, I just completed my dissertation and my PhD in 2017. So in this mentor role, I'm perhaps the close to whatever the next step might be. And so I can talk a little bit about that process that just occurred of leaving the PhD and figuring out what happens next. Thank you.
Thanks, Allie. All right. It is now time for everyone to be able to ask the mentors questions. Whatever is burning in your heart, now is your chance. So please type your questions in the chat box, and Janisha, she's going to be moderating them and then asking them to the mentors. And please specify if your question is for one particular mentor or for all of them. We'll try, hopefully, we can get to all of the questions if there are a lot. But if we aren't able to, don't worry, you will have another chance on Slack in the next round to engage with some of these mentors. So while you guys are thinking of questions and putting them in the chat box, I'm actually gonna get us started with the first question. So I wanna put this to all of the mentors. So based on all of your long and colorful and wonderful experiences that you've had up to now, What do you know now that you wish you had known earlier in your career? Who would like to start us off?
It's a good question. I'll jump in while I keep thinking about it. I am somebody who, it's hard for me to change. It's hard for me to sort of go to a new company or change positions or change jobs. And really making the decision to leave one company and go to another always has been very difficult for me. That said, every time I've done it, I have learned so much and have really treasured the new opportunities that I've had. So I think that I wish, especially in my early years, I wish I knew that those transitions were actually going to be very good for me and my career.
For me, it's really every time I work on a new project, I learn something about what I could have done on a previous project that I didn't do. And so it could be methods related, it could be design related, and or even just understanding different environments where projects occur. So yeah, it's hard to narrow down on a specific thing that I wish I had known before.
Let me just mention my graduate work was in sociology of education, and really much more focused on the U.S. And for the first decade of my postdoctoral work, I was interested in what was going on in other countries, maybe more so than a lot of sociologists of education in the U.S. at that time, and even sought to work outside the U.S. in England. But I wish I had been active from the time I was a graduate student in CIES and had a much stronger network internationally than I did. And it, I've been kind of trying to catch up, if you will, for the latter years, including spending 2 years as a visiting professor in Cuba to try to strengthen my relationships there.
Mary, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's anything I wish I had done. I sound like Donald Trump, don't I? Like there's no mistake I made before. But I am really grateful that I had a strong many years of US domestic experience, and not simply US. I taught in Mexico, I taught in Jamaica. I'm really glad, but I am very glad that I was teaching in the US because, I think we're of different minds in the international world about that domestic experience. I meet people who just say, no, that doesn't matter. It's the United States. Oh, it's different. It's sui generis. And then, but really, a lot of the innovative practices come from places where there's the time and resources to work on developing innovative practices. And I've really found that those years, my many years working as a teacher with kids, with teachers in the US has just paid so many dividends. The international education world, I think, is typically decades behind what's going on domestically. So for example, we've just discovered coaching in, let's say, the last 10 years. But coaching has been around since the 80s. I mean, teachers have had coaches for a long time. So, I know that everyone is focused on international education, but I wouldn't eschew at all getting a really good experience, practical, hands-on experience in whatever country you find yourself living in right now, even if it's Europe or Australia or the United States.
That's really helpful and interesting. Thanks, Mary. All right, I want to open it up now to questions from the participants. Janisha, do we have any questions?
Yeah, the questions have started coming in. So the first one is for all mentors. Do you have any advice regarding whether or not to enroll in a comparative international education PhD during this new normal of social distancing and the economic fallout of this pandemic? Are there avenues for non-academic work for those with masters in CIE?
You know, maybe I can take that because I think Heather, I know Mark, and where's my other colleague? I can't find her on my screen. All have PhDs. I do not.
I don't either.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I have, I'll just say I have never, ever found not having a PhD to be a problem. It's only a problem if you want to be a chief of party of a USAID funded project, which I never, ever would want to do, nor would they want me, because I don't have that skill set. It matters if you want to teach, you know, in universities, but you can still, I was a university instructor without a PhD. And it does matter in a lot of countries because they're more status conscious. The US is a very flat system. So my favorite story is that I wrote Lebanon's national technology plan. And then someone from the very high level of the ministry came to me afterwards and said, but you don't have a PhD, you can't write that plan. And I said, well, I just did. So I think that I didn't say it like that. But so, you know, I would say more than anything is, in my experience, it's get a practical, it depends what you want to do. But academic research doesn't always translate into actual program implementation, nor do we use it, nor do we find it very accessible in terms of A, getting to it because it's hidden behind a paywall, and B, finding that the research practically helps us in our work. And let's just speak very frankly. So I would say, if you can do it, you know, depending on what it is you want to do, think about what it is you want to be doing in 20 years, 30 years. If it's teaching at a university and doing research, sure, a PhD is important. But if it's working with teachers, doing program design, doing development, you don't need it. In my experience, you're fine with a master's degree.
Yeah, I would echo that again. I have a master's. I do think that for when I was at the American Institutes for Research, not having a PhD, I hit up against a ceiling there. I think a similar ceiling I would hit at some think tanks or some other places that were very, even if they weren't universities, academic focus, where those credentials really hold a lot of water. I found none of that ceiling at Save the Children or Room to Read or some of the other big NGO partner implementing organizations that just have a very different sort of variety of jobs. And I was able to find a path with my credentials being perfectly adequate.
Yeah, just to chime in, it really does depend on what you want to get out of what your next steps are. And so if you want to be focusing on research, I do think that the PhD helps even out of academia. But if you want to focus on program implementation and not necessarily research about those programs, then I don't think that, and most of the program implementers that I work with don't have a PhD and it's not necessary. But then if I look at like directors of monitoring and evaluation within Save the Children, most of them do have a PhD. So it depends on where you want to go and what you want to do with it. And you can do it remotely. So that helps in this new COVID-19 era.
And it does make a difference what your prior international and project experience is. I mean, if you are just completing an MA or a master's degree and wanting to get into the field, you may actually have more opportunities, not necessarily where you want to be in 20 years, but to get access, because people will be hiring people with master's degrees to do certain kinds of work. and a PhD might not actually fit the category that they're doing. I think the one disadvantage I've had of having a PhD is convincing a number of my colleagues around the world that it actually is just 3 letters, and that doesn't mean that what I am thinking or saying is somehow much more important. I had real difficulty in a number of countries I worked with getting people to actually collaborate in the process as opposed to depend on me to, you know, answer all the questions that are directed. After a while, that became less of an issue, but I mean, sometimes it was helpful when talking with people in the ministry that they were more likely to listen to me than my colleagues who are actually more knowledgeable about the situation. And so we played that game, but I was more worried about, you know, interactions with teachers and with other people on the project who somehow assumed not only was it a PhD, but a PhD from a developed country made it much more important. And I'm not convinced that I always was the fount of knowledge that some of my colleagues seem to assume.
Okay, thank you so much. So the next question is, what are the skills that you use in your job? And I'm thinking
Janisha, I do want to just jump in here. We are at 1 minute left. I know this is speed mentoring, so everything moves very fast. So if we could just get this one last question in, maybe 1 or 2 of the mentors can answer it, and then we will have to wrap up round 1.
I do a lot of tool development. So for qualitative tool development, focus group protocols, interview protocols, a lot of quantitative research. Although I'm not a quantitative researcher, I have just started doing quantitative research. I've got data open on my computer right now. And then a lot of design, project design, writing into proposals about evaluation, about seeking out funding for research, a lot of that.
What was the question? What skills were used right now in our job?
yes.
Yeah, so I'm on the management team of Room to Read, so we do a lot of staffing sort of analysis to figure out if we have the right staff. We look at a lot of budgets. Right now we're doing a lot of looking at our strategic plan and figuring out what pieces of that strategic plan we can continue working on, even as we're pivoting with all the schools in the world almost closed. And so a lot of my discussion is at that very strategic level, and then I have technical experts who design our implementation activities and monitor them and stuff like that, but trying to make those decisions of how to keep advancing the mission of the organization and making sure we have the resources we need to get it done.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. Well, it is 12:25, so it is the end of round 1 already. So I want to thank Heather, Mary, Ali, and Mark for joining us here on Zoom. We are hoping that you will be able to now move over to Slack and continue to engage with our mentees there and answer some more questions. Mentees, now you have 3 choices. You can either head over to Slack to continue to talk with Mary, Heather, Ali, and Mark, or you can stay here for the next group of mentors. Or if you're really ambitious, you can try and do both at the same time. It is totally up to you. So again, thank you to our mentors, and we will be starting round 2 in about 3 minutes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Hey,
Heather.
good luck to everybody.
Thanks, you too. Stay safe.
Thank you, everyone. I can't get on Zoom, but I wish you well, or contact me if you have questions.
Thanks,
Get on
Mary.
Slack, excuse me.
Okay, I want to check and see if our next group of mentors is here. Suzanne, Eric, Mona, are you here? There's Suzanne.
Here.
Great.
This is Sue Grant Lewis.
Great. We're going to start in about 3 minutes.
Roger.
Eric and Mona, are you here?
Yep, this is Eric. I'm here.
There's Eric. Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
I was just saying sorry that you cannot hear me, cannot see me. You just see the bridge, but I'm here. I tried to make the video working, but it didn't.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Mona. Sorry your video isn't working, but we'll just roll with it. We're glad we can hear you.
Yeah.
So it looks like, I think, a lot of the same participants who are here in round one are going to stick around, or maybe they just still have their Zoom on. So we'll try and get through the initial comments pretty quickly in this next round so we can get into the good stuff of speaking with mentors.
Also, I would like strongly recommend participants to ask questions to mentors on Slack session. If you have any specific question addressed to a specific mentor, please go over to Slack, tag them, and ask your questions. And I feel like it shouldn't be too difficult to be on Zoom and Slack at the same time. So I would encourage all to make most of these both platforms.
So just a note, I'm actually not going to be able to be on Slack. I'll do the Zoom part here. So, but
No
happy
worries.
also to do a chat on the side through Zoom.
No worries. Thanks, Eric. All right, we'll start in just a minute. And it looks like Heather and Allie, and I'm not sure who else from round one, are already on Slack. And there's a good discussion going on, so that's exciting. All right, it is 12:30. So welcome everyone to the first ever virtual speed mentoring session on speed mentoring for careers in comparative and international education. If you're just joining us, my name is Adrienne Hank, and I am one of the facilitators of this event. I'm a Washington, D.C. based early childhood education consultant. And with me is my co-host, Janisha Chavda. Would you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Janisha, and I'm a PhD student in education policy at Michigan State University.
Thanks, Janisha. All right, so we're thrilled. It looks like more and more participants are joining us, so that's wonderful. And we have a wonderful lineup of mentors for this round who will be sharing their experiences. As I mentioned before, we have a total of 11 mentors participating today, and you'll be able to hear from 3 of them in just a few moments. If you want to learn about all the mentors, please do check out our Meet Your Mentors document. Janisha will post that link in the chat box so you can check it out. So just really quickly for our mentors and anyone else who's just tuning in, how this is going to work. So there are 4 25-minute rounds and 4 groups of mentors. Right now, we're at the start of round 2. And the rounds are taking place simultaneously on Zoom and on Slack. Here on Zoom, we're going to have a moderated Q&A with you guys. And then afterwards, if you are able, you can slide over to Slack and the mentees can continue to ask you questions. A few ground rules, just everyone, please keep your microphone on mute, except for the mentors when it's your turn to speak. As I said, this is a moderated mentoring session, and Janisha will be sharing the questions. And this session is being recorded. All right, so meet the amazing mentors for round 2. So I'll just state their name and then I'm gonna let them do their own speed introduction of about 1 minute each. So with us, we have Suzanne Grant-Lewis, Eric Eversman, and Mona Yunus. Suzanne, would you like to start?
Sure. Okay, so I am currently the director of UNESCO's International Institute for Educational Planning here in Paris. We are also under confinement. And I have been the director for 6 years now, 6 years in July. First female director, I may say. But prior to that, I have worked in philanthropy and I was a faculty member at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And I've done lots of things in my life. Thanks.
So there's a nice connection. Sue was my professor at Harvard Graduate School of Education, where I got my master's. I started my career working with Peace Corps and international education exchange. After my time, I did a dual degree with Tufts University and the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and started working in education in emergencies. Did that for a number of years, working with UNHCR and UNICEF and IRC, and then for the last 15 years, I've been based in the United States, leading education groups at both CRS and Save the Children, where I've been for the past 10 years.
Great. And Mona?
Yes, this is Mona Yunus. I am currently based in California. I have a PhD from Lancaster University in Education and Social Justice. My main focus is education in emergencies in the MENA region. I have done a lot of consultancies for international organizations such as UNHCR, UNICEF, World Child Development Plan, University of Sussex. As we said in the previous sessions, the pathway goes from the academia back to the consultancy and from consultancies back to the academia. But I have never stopped being in the academia, but I do a lot of consultancies, mostly remotely. Yes.
Great. Thank you, Mona. You have so many experiences. Okay, now it's time to ask the mentors questions. So participants, start thinking about what you want to ask them and go ahead and type your questions in the chat box. Janisha is going to be moderating them and she will try and get to as many of them as she can. We'll do our best. If we don't get to it, you have a second chance on Slack in the next round. So let me start us off with a question for all 3 of our mentors. So given all of your experiences to this point, what do you know now that you wish you had known earlier in your career? Who'd like to start us off?
Happy to do so.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yes, please.
Okay. So, well, thank you very much. And it's, I think compared to Mona and Eric, I'm considerably older, so it is a point of some reflection over the decades of working in comparative international education. I'd like to make 3 points. One is the importance of following your passion. I used to feel that things that came easy were not worth doing, and that I should really pursue things that were very difficult or that I didn't necessarily enjoy so much. And while it's very important to push ourselves, to learn and to get outside of our comfort zone, when you're really enjoying something, it tends to be something that is giving you joy and you're quite good at it and it doesn't feel like work. And you should really reflect on that kind of work and not dismiss it as something that's really not worth doing because it comes easy to you. The second point is I wish I had understood, as I do now, how important building bridges is. The paradigm used to be that information is power, and I think that's still the case, but the paradigm used to be that one held it to oneself. But really today, the more you share your knowledge, information, build bridges, network, the better it is for you and for many others. And I have found that that's really been important. My third comment would be careful what you put in writing. I recall in my brasher days, you tend to be a bit less tolerant and judgmental. And sometimes when you complain or criticize something, it can come back to bite you. So those are three things that I wish I had known back in the 20s in my 20s when I had started in this career. Thanks.
I can jump in next. I think I would echo what Sue was saying. I would, in particularly around sharing and building bridges. I think of it also now and this was much more the case than when I started, but I think that having an individual reputation, having a personal brand, being known in a certain area, and by contributing, particularly by contributing and sharing and reaching out and networking and helping others, I think that will serve you very, very well over the long term. And there are many more opportunities to do that today, and I think that it's also maybe in some ways more expected that it will happen. I think the other thing I would say that I've noticed, and I'm not maybe sure if this is something like maybe I wish I knew, but I've been interested in a wide range of things over the course of my career and been able to pursue them. The importance of organizational theory and how organizations work. So it's whether it's the organizations that you're in, and a UN organization versus an international NGO, the organizations that you work with, such as ministries of education, and the political economy of these organizations is often very important, and people who are able to navigate these successfully are some of the people that I see kind of making some of the biggest impacts and changes in the field, and it's something I've maybe learned kind of the hard way over time, but it's also something I've become quite interested in and spent some time trying to get to be a better practitioner of.
May I add something here?
Please do.
Yeah, I will make it very brief. I will second what Susan and Eric have been saying. Network, network, network. This is a key and the magical key in order to proceed with getting consultancies, especially in international education. And I really wish I had known that long ago. And maybe it's an advantage that you don't see me, because I have also very white hair and I have been in education since the 1980s, and that's a very long time, and I should have built a much stronger network throughout those decades. And not having done that puts me a little bit in a disadvantage now, but I'm trying to catch up. And I also would say, always try to discover your passion. And even if you are not able to do what you want to do now, but don't ever lose your, like what we say in the Arab world, your compass. You should have a compass, you should have a direction, it should be clear, and always try to pursue towards it, even if you are not able to do what you want to do now, but you have to have a direction that's very important in anyone's career. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. Yeah, absolutely. As Simon Sinek would say, your why. Why do you do what you do? I just want to ask a follow-up question really quick. Mona, you mentioned networking. Eric, you mentioned having your own brand. Can you share some practical tips on how to do this and make yourself known?
Yes, very important to attend events, to attend conferences, to attend webinars, to be always there so that your name is out there. People would know you. People would again and again read your name on blogs, read your name on when they meet you online and offline. Like Eric said, contributing a lot, contributing and maybe volunteering. That's very important.
Yeah, I would just echo everything that Mona just said. I think particularly having things written down, and they don't have to be long or in depth, but things like blog posts, using Twitter, establishing a voice and this compass, or why, being recognized as having a perspective and bringing that perspective consistently to a range of issues. People start to look to you and think about you when that comes up for them in their own work life.
Awesome. Sue, did you want to add anything, or should we go on to the next questions?
No, go ahead to the next. Sure.
Okay. I want to get to all of the questions that you all are putting in the chat box. So Jeannie should take it away.
Yeah. So we have a question on how can job seekers present themselves as best candidates for virtual positions? And where do you see the possibility for virtual positions in CIE, especially considering the current COVID situation?
Yes, I can maybe jump here because I have been doing so much work remotely. Most of my work that has been done was remotely. And to do work remotely is now much more important than ever. You need to be able to convince job seekers when you try to get a consultancy, for instance, that you are really good at working remotely. You need to show them that you are ready to work with different time zones. You are able to work with multiple backgrounds and multiple and multicultural teams. You are able to understand the different cultures and the different backgrounds. Having more than one language, that's very important. These are things that I think are very important when you work remotely and when you want to market yourself as someone who is able to do that.
I think I don't have a good sense of what's happening on the job market right now since the beginning of March in light of the pandemic, but we're IAP still hiring consultants. I think a couple of things are really important. To really pitch yourself as having skills and an understanding of context. I think what's difficult is if we need some analysis done, but we're not able to travel, and we may not be able to travel for several more months. Even if we can get out of France, we can't. Maybe we would have to go into confinement on arrival in a country, so it's not really doable. So to the extent that you understand a context, that should be very important to explain, or a context as an example of other contexts. So for example, if it's in crisis settings where some of the concerns would be transferable, or if you can speak about a region. And then secondly, what's always good, really important, is to talk about your analytic skills and your communication skills. I think I would really stress those two. What do you think, Eric?
I think if it's specific, we're about half of our team is remote. So I think everything that Mona says applies. Certainly, we expect people to be able to work remotely. We expect people to work across time zones with virtual teams, etc. So being able to show that you can do that, to respond to the virtual part of the question. I think the other thing for me is that there are sort of what I might refer to as chains of trust that are established, and this gets back to the comments about building relationships and bridges. Often when we're making a new hire, whether it's for a formal position or for a consultancy, or maybe even an internship, there's knowing the people who are on my team. If somebody knows somebody on my team and can vouch for them, that establishes for me sort of a level of trust in that person. I trust the people on my team, and then when I know that they trust somebody else, that makes me feel like, okay, this person is somebody that we can bring in, they can hit the ground running. We know that they're going to do good quality work. So, you know, certainly second everything that Sue and Mona said, but also that getting to know the people in an organization that you want to work with and finding opportunities to connect with them can be really helpful over the long term.
Yeah, I would echo that, Eric. I think to keep in mind that employers are doing a risk analysis, and they're, you know, it costs a lot to recruit and do the interviews, et cetera, et cetera. So to the extent that you can speak specifically about you've done your homework, never go into an interview not having really done your homework on the organization. I mean, the worst interviews are where somebody is in another part of UNESCO and they didn't even bother to look at our website, you know, so they really don't know much. And so the impression is left that they don't really want the job. They're just, you know, practicing their interview skills or something. So that's very, very important. But to have tried to reach out to people in the organization to better understand things, I think that's really important. So it's, unfortunately, it remains very much about social capital, you know, who you know, et cetera. But you can address that through some of the ideas that Mona mentioned, you know, being at events, et cetera. Introduce yourself. It's a lot easier, job hunting so much easier for extroverts. And so I don't know what it's like to be an introvert, so I don't know what to say, but just recognize that and make the extra effort. If you're in grad school, get a business card so when you meet people, you can leave them your contacts. It's not too early.
Thank you so much, mentors. So the next question is, what strategies and skills PhD applicants should apply when they are trying to apply for job positions in the organizations that you work with?
Okay, so I work in the United Nations. I'm in UNESCO, which is a member state organization. And just to keep in mind that Americans are no longer being hired in UNESCO because UNESCO, the United States is no longer a member state. However, it's open to, neither is Israel. So it's open to every other country in the world, just to be sure, be clear on that. So if you have dual citizenship, put the other citizenship down. You're not required to put both citizenships down. Best probably to leave off the US because you can get automatically pre-selected out. It's simple hint, which is clear for all UN organization hiring, is look at the competencies that are required and desired. The interviews will all be about those competency. The UN is doing competency-based interviews. So think about that in your cover letter and in your application. Stress those things. Redo your resume. The UN, some UN agency online forms are really awful, but don't keep using the one you did for 3 other jobs. You know, take the time to customize it to the position and really focus on the competencies, both in the description of your work experience and in the cover letter. Thanks.
Yes, out of my experience customizing the cover letter to the position is very, very, very important. I know it is horribly time consuming, but it must be done. This is the homework that has to be done. Yes.
Can I just ask a follow-up question? So I've worked with a career coach who does not work in our field, but she has said that many employers don't look at cover letters. But it sounds like you guys are saying that you do. Would you say that that's pretty common in our field?
I think it is. I think it's really important. It provides you the opportunity to give a narrative, to explain how. Somebody once gave me the advice when I was applying to Stanford for my doctorate. You have to write an application letter to suggest that your entire life has led you to this point, and this is just obviously the next step. It's kind of like that. You build a narrative that helps people understand your CV. Sometimes I'll read if a cover letter is full of typos or mistakes or wasn't even proofread, I might not go on to read the CV. But I think it depends on the organization.
Thanks. So we have just 2 minutes left. Janisha, can we squeeze in one more question or so?
Yeah, before that, I just wanted to make sure if Eric, you wanted to add something to this question.
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So one last question is that if someone is working on the front line or at the grassroots level, and if they want to work in the organizations which you work, how should they project themselves?
Eric, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure to project yourself. I mean, I think, know the organization that you're applying to, know the job that you're applying to, and tailor what you're offering to that. Again, if you're a PhD who's applying to save the children, try to understand what the role of a PhD is going to be. We're not going to be a purely academic organization, so we're going to want somebody who can bring PhD skills to also marry with, expertise around implementation science. So just, I would always keep coming back to that. And just really quickly, somebody asked about strategies about reaching out to people you haven't met yet. I would just come back to Mona's point about getting there in person, positioning yourself. I remember I put myself into debt a couple times early on because I spent the money to get myself to a meeting or a conference. But those things always turned out to be so important. And when I was there, I just tried to make myself as useful as I could, because I think, as Sue said, people are, everything an organization does has a cost, and if they interact with you, it's going to have a cost. So make sure that you make that interaction worthwhile.
Okay, it is 12:55, so speed mentoring goes quickly. It is the end of round 2. So I want to thank our mentors. I know there were so many questions. However, our mentors now, I believe Sue and Mona, you'll be moving over to Slack. Yes. And you'll be able to continue to answer questions there. Mentees, stick around here, head to Slack, do both. Whichever you want, and in about 4 minutes we'll be welcoming our next set of mentors for round 3. So thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Eric, Sue, and Mona. This was wonderful.
Thanks everybody, and
thank you so much.
Adrian?
Yes.
Do I stay here for the next, or is there a different link for the next round?
No, you're free to go. There will be a different set of mentors. So thank you so much.
No, I'm listed as twice.
Oh, really?
Oh, no, sorry, that is over to Slack.
Yeah.
Sorry. So when I went to Slack, I didn't see, so it asked for like a login and I didn't have any login.
Janisha, I think you're good at explaining this.
Yeah, so while logging in, there would be a link called Forgot Password below the login button. So if you just click on Forgot Password and then type in your email ID, you will be able to log in because they'll send you an email in your inbox and then you just follow that link and you log in.
So, okay. Got it. Okay, I'll give that a shot.
Yeah, and please do use the email which you used for registration with CIS. So that might help you get into Slack.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Eric. All right, it looks like some of our mentors for the next round, round 3, are starting to join. Jordine, I see you. Hello. And Christian, I believe you were there. Hello. And then who else? Will. I'm not seeing Will yet. Will, are you here?
Yeah, I just got here.
Oh, there you are. Wonderful. And we have 4 mentors this time. So Priya. Is
Hi.
Priya here? There you are. So I'm Adrienne. It's nice to meet you all virtually for the first time. And you see Janisha up there. So thank you all, mentors, for participating in this. This is really great.
Thanks for having us.
So we'll get started momentarily, but mentors, and I'll explain everything, but do you guys have any quick questions before we start?
Just how's it going so far, Adrienne?
It's going well. Yeah, because this is the 3rd round. So this is the 3rd time that Janisha and I have done this. And I think it's going pretty well. I don't know, participants, you can chime in the chat. You know, thumbs up, thumbs down. I know it's quick and we wish we could get to more questions for the mentors, but hey, if this was in-person speed mentoring, it would be 15 minutes, which, well, I guess we are giving you guys about 15 minutes or so, but yeah. All right, so we're a little bit shy of 1 o'clock, but I know that every minute is precious. So let's go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to the first ever virtual speed mentoring for careers in comparative and international education session. I want to thank mentors and mentees for joining us in this really challenging time. We're so happy to see you and hope that you are well and safe. My name is Adrienne Hank. I am a Washington, D.C. based early childhood education consultant, and I will be facilitating this event along with my co-chair, Janisha Chavda. Janisha, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Hello, mentors. I'm Janisha, and I'm a PhD student in education policy at Michigan State University.
Thanks, Janisha. All right, so we are doing this virtually for the first time, though we're in round 3 now, so I think we're getting a hang of it. But we do ask for your patience, if there are any technical glitches or anything. So we're thrilled to have so many participants show up for this, and a wonderful lineup of mentors who are going to be sharing their experiences. As you know, we really intentionally focus this event on careers outside of academia. We understand that there's a lot of early career CIS members really request a lot more support in that area. So jobs with NGOs, international organizations, consultancies, research institutes. But we also recognize that, it's never just a straight line from point A to point B. Everyone's careers does all kinds of crisscrosses and squigglies into academia and back again. And you'll definitely see that with at least one of our mentors this time. Today in this full speed mentoring session, we've had a total of 11 mentors. You're going to hear from 4 of them just momentarily. If you haven't seen the Meet Your Mentors document yet, that has profiles of all of the mentors that are participating today. You can check that out. Janisha can share the link in the chat box. Okay, real quick, how is virtual speed mentoring going to work? So in total, there's 4 25-minute rounds, and we've had 4 groups of mentors. As I said, right now we're at the beginning of round 3. And these rounds are taking simultaneously on Zoom and on Slack. Here on Zoom, we're gonna have a moderated Q&A with our mentors. And then afterwards, this group of mentors, if they're able, they'll head over to Slack and you can continue to ask them questions there. If you want to see the schedule for who's coming up in our last round, Janisha can also post that link to the schedule. Okay, and just ground rules. Everyone, please keep your microphones on mute, except for the mentors when it's your turn to speak. As I said, we're going to do a moderated mentoring session, so you'll be posting your questions in the chat box, and Janisha will be facilitating that. Also, please note, we're recording this, and yeah, I think that's all. All right, so let's get started. So we have 4 awesome mentors, and I want to give them a chance to introduce themselves. I'm just going to state their name, and then each of them will have a chance to give a 1-minute speed intro. So with us in this session, we have Jordine Hale, Will Smith, Christian Fabi, and Priya Joshi. Jordine, would you like to kick us off with your speed intro?
Sure. Thank you, Adrian. I'm Jordine Hale, and I'm currently Chief of Party for the Northern Education Initiative in Nigeria. It's an $80 million system strengthening project that's aimed at improving early grade reading in Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba. There are 100 staff in 3 states. And 5 technical divisions. It's a bit of a circus in that there are many rings going on at the same time and multiple activities every day. Prior to this, I've been a teacher, a bartender, a mother, a whole lot of things that have influenced my management style. I have a background in education, I have a PhD, I have a interest in monitoring and evaluation. So sort of all those things combined. Thank you.
Will, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Will Smith. I'm currently a senior lecturer at the University of Edinburgh in Education and International Development. And I've kind of had like all of us, I think, a meandering path to this. So I actually went and was working on my PhD with Adrian at Penn State. And from there, ended up spending some time in civil society, looking at the Right to Education Index, went and worked with Priya at the Global Education Monitoring Report at UNESCO before I made my way to academia here. So I do a lot of work on education development. Right now I'm doing a lot of work on program building within the university, but I've also got research projects trying to keep a foot in kind of the civil society world. So I've got research projects working with partners in Asia and UNICEF and Scottish government, really trying to figure out how do we bridge the barrier between academic research and other research, whether civil society, international organizations, or practitioner-based. So exciting to talk to everybody.
Great, thanks. Christian?
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm in Italy. I'm in Reggio Emilia in Italy. And okay, I am a senior fellow in early childhood care and education at IB UNESCO. IB is International Bureau of Education. We are working on developing a prototype of early childhood care and education system that should strengthen the capacity of the countries, mostly developing countries, in creating a stable and resilient and holistic ECCE system. Out of that, I'm also president of the Reggio Emilia preschool system. And thank you very much for having me here.
Great, and Priya?
Hi, Adrian. Hi, Will. It's good to see you here. I'm senior analyst at the GEM report at UNESCO. We monitor education progress around the world. My expertise is on non-state engagement in education, which will be our next year's report. And also, since I've been here since the beginning, I guess the Sustainable Development Agenda and what it means for education systems and the world. And I guess it's a very timely time to be thinking about all of those things, whether we will actually function as a collective, whether we'll come out of this crisis, to being able to better function as a collective or not. My background is, I've also gone through a lot of career paths. My background is primarily in international organizations. I've made my way from fiscally conservative, approaches at the IMF to UNESCO. So that's been my journey.
Thank you so much, Priya. All right, now it is time for all of you to think of the questions that you want to ask to this group of mentors. As I said, please type them in the chat box, and Janisha will be moderating this Q&A. Please be sure, if your question is for a specific mentor, write their name, or if it's for everyone, indicate that. I'm going to get us started off with the first question, and this is for all of the mentors. All of you have so much extensive and interesting experience, and I'd like to know, based on all of that experience, what do you know now that you wish you had known earlier in your career? So who would like to start us off? Jordine, I see you took your mic off. Did you want to give that one a shot?
I guess my initial response is simply that it's okay to say, I don't know, I'll get back to you, and I'll figure it out with you. In the beginning of my career, I thought I needed to know things, thought I needed to be an expert. And I've realized over the years that I really need to be a team player, somebody who works with to solve problems. And for me, learning how to phrase what is the problem and before coming up to solutions has been a key part of it. So I wish I'd had more confidence to not know when I was younger. And now I'm really good at saying I don't know.
Awesome. Who wants to chime in next?
I guess I can just say, I think it's very important to spend time self-reflecting on what your passion and interests are, because, especially with people who have academic leanings, like a lot of our, early CIS scholars, I think what I faced was a lot of, you're good at this, continue on this path, versus, think more seriously about what you really want to do, and how do you think about that in the long term. What do you want to be doing 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Like doing that serious reflection while doing your early job searches, I think helps everyone.
Yeah, so for me, I think there's quite a bit of overlap with our first two, but I think part of it is just not getting stuck when you're going through grad school and you're going through your PhD. There's really only one thing you're being trained for, and that's academia. And I know that's why people are here, is because they're looking for an alternative. But even when you're trying to get a job outside of academia, you're still stuck in that mindset oftentimes. And so for me, one of the big things that I'm still learning is, how do you communicate in a way that's different than you communicated during your master's or your PhD? So I know, Priya and others at the GEM report helped me a lot to think about, how do you communicate in a different manner to a different audience? So just expand, understanding now that there's a lot of different ways to communicate that you really need to refine. And just because you're good at communicating one way doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be automatically good at communicating other ways.
Yes. So I just want to go back to Jordine and say that also I've been thinking about this question for a few days, and it's difficult to say, because every day you learn something new. It's like young children, like in early childhood. Every day you do this kind of work, you learn something new. So actually, it's just important to be open to the unknown and be able to welcome what comes every day. And I also agree with Will about the communication. I mean, I come from a late encounter in which maybe formal and informal sometimes overlap. And when I started to work in the United Nations environment, this is something that is a bit dangerous. So we have to learn how to communicate in a different way in the different scenarios, in coherence with what is expected.
Thanks so much, everyone. All right, Janisha, let's take a look at the questions from our participants.
Okay, so the question is, while choosing courses in grad school, do you recommend choosing electives that cover hard skills we may need in the field, like Stata and M&E, etc., or courses that interest us and expand our knowledge in areas we may not be familiar with, but that don't have as many resume building skills?
I'll start, if you don't mind. I'll start because this is another issue. If I understand the question, I mean, I studied ICT, psychology, and early childhood, which are somehow they're going in different directions. So I think that it's very important to think about your track, what is interesting for you and what you consider familiar for your own personality and for your own way of seeing life. So I think that if you get familiar to what you study and you learn, then you can get familiar with different working scenarios. So I think that it's not necessary to think too much about the market, and you should better think about building your own confidence in what you are studying and in the process that you want to develop in your life.
I think that I agree that it should be a blend of both hard technical things that you can't learn on your own. I think that's the key. If you can read the book on your own and understand it, then you don't need a course in it. So something, you know, sort of what we consider a hard science, you might need someone to help you through it, like monitoring and evaluation. That's a thing that you might need to talk about in order to learn. Other topics, philosophical, I don't know. Are you the kind of person who needs to talk about what is development, or can you simply read Amartya Sen or some of the other great works by yourself and absorb and understand what's going on? It really depends on who you are. For me, I needed to take a mixture of both. I needed to have some things in my life that were really inspirational. And then I needed to have the, you know, how to do qualitative statistical analysis, which I needed to take the course because when I read the book, I looked at it and I didn't understand it, and I needed somebody to help me understand it. So I needed something that inspired me and something that was going to be so difficult to learn on my own.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important to find something that you're passionate about, that you're going to want to do and succeed. And graduate school is hard enough. If you're not interested, it's not going to be very successful. But I don't know, I tend to be kind of very strategic in the courses that I've took during grad school. So thinking about, you know, are you pursuing a career right after your master's, or are you going to a PhD? Because at the end, I think you do want those practical skills, but you might take them a little earlier if you're going straight from your master's and into the job market, compared to maybe doing some more theoretical or regional studies and then doing more practical skills during a PhD. But I think you definitely need to have those kind of applied research pieces, and, you know, being at least exposed to a lot of different types of approaches can be quite important. So I'm a big fan of applied research and coming out with practical skills.
I feel like Jordan really put it really well. You know, if you need support, you know, and grad school is time to do that. You need to build those technical skills. When we hire, or you know, when we've been in different hiring positions, we always look for that combination of methodology and expertise. If you look at any job posting on UN Jobs or any other place, you'll find, I mean, I think that's a good way to look at it. Like, you look at sort of what kinds of expertise are expected. In early careers, I think people are expecting more of a methods focus and transferable skills focus. I would say, though, that what is a hard skill really depends on where you stand and what career you're like position yourself for. So, I came from a fairly economics background, so nothing was, everything had to be like very hard skills. In other contexts, I feel like, real strong focus on language might actually be the core skill you need, depending on what you really are pursuing in terms of like, the time and investment it needs from grad school work to really position you well for the next job. I think methods are very important because also we know that there's so much innovative data and methodology that keeps expanding every year. And unless you get into that mind frame of using methods, you might not be as interested in picking up new methods, which I think if you're in the researchy area, that's very important. If you're not, I think you have to, think again about the other kinds of skills you need. But in the early phase, definitely focus, I think, on more transferable skills and, what is considered sort of state of the art.
Thank you so much, mentors. So the next question is, how do you advise job seekers to apply for jobs within CIE that typically require 3 to 5 years of subject or content area experience? How should they bridge this gap?
So, I guess I can jump in and get started. So for me, I guess I understood what my strengths and weaknesses were. So I did not have much international experience at all the first time I was on the market. And I knew I wasn't going to have international experience. I couldn't afford to get international experience. And so I compensated for that some by basically doing more consultant work, doing remote desk-based chapters, writing policy papers, getting out publications. So I had an area of strength that I can look at. And the other thing I would say is, being active and trying to figure out how do you package what you've completed and what you're working on in grad school as experience. I mean, most of us aren't just sitting and reading and going to class. There's other things that we're participating in that are important and can add to your experience and what they're talking about there. And don't be frightened off by something that says, oh, 5 years of experience. If it's a great fit, it's a great fit and apply. So.
Anybody else want to jump in, or should we go to the next one?
Let me say just as I agree, but I want to add that some kind of experience in the field is important. I mean, I come from Reggio Emilia, so in our experience in early childhood, we have our methodology, our approach, but in general, I think that it's important to somehow have some kind of experience. So as it was said, you don't have to be frightened by the request. You have maybe to find a way to create your own experience by working in the field, or at least make some kind of internship, because they are really useful when you enter and you get the job. Because otherwise the risk is that when you face the job and you don't have a sort of mind map on how it works, you can have a very bad experience. So I think that experience is also important.
I echo that completely. I think my experience as a classroom teacher and a teacher supervisor and a curriculum developer, all of those US-based experiences really help me now when I go to talk to teachers. I can relate to what they're doing and how they're doing it. And so don't discount building those skills here. The skills of early grade reading are early grade reading, regardless of where you're doing them. Curriculum development is curriculum development. Backwards design is backwards design. Assessment is assessment. So when you're looking at transferring skills, look at what you can achieve where you are at that point and how that can be translated into the international context. I would also suggest becoming somewhat of an expert in a region, Central Asia, Africa, East Africa, West Africa, so that you can speak clearly and articulately about the troubles, needs, wants of a particular region or a particular country, and make yourself known in that group. There's a subgroup of people in CIES that are interested in place-specific issues. So don't discount that ability of what you can do outside of academia.
I just wanted to add one point that I do think some of these comments are quite or issues are quite gendered. Like some people, I find men are much more, and I think it's in the literature, men are much more comfortable applying for something that is beyond their experience, and women seem to want to make sure that they have absolutely, like the 90 to 100% of the experience before they apply for the job. So I feel like now I'm sort of slowly getting into this phase of thinking that, okay, if it's about 50%, then I can apply. I can do the job. I know I can do the job. It's just a question of applying. And I think in terms of applications, be proactive. I think what all of the other mentors have said, they all are, like key pieces of advice in sort of putting together that early career, portfolio. But just be proactive in applying. If you think you like something, apply. Leave the decision of, what happens to the other, to the end. And I think that has to be said as often as you can, because many people are not proactive in applying. So.
Okay, so the next question is, if someone is doing global job search, both within universities and outside universities, what are some job searching resources that you would recommend, such as places to look for positions?
Any of our mentors want to take that?
I don't know about
Thanks,
places.
Will.
Sorry, I don't know about places to look for, but one thing that was useful for me is reaching out to people that are in the position you want to be in, and talking with them and saying, okay, can you talk me through what does a cover letter look like in this? Because it's going to look very different if you're working with Save the Children versus working and applying to a UNESCO job, to an academic job. And so finding and reaching out to colleagues or individuals you admire and say, hey, this is where I want to be. I was wondering if you can help talk to me about this and share some of those. I know that when I was trying to get back in academia and struggling some with my applications, I reached out to all of my colleagues from grad school and asked them to share. And I learned a lot by just looking at their application materials and talking to them about it.
Thanks, Will. And maybe I just want to add in, also, I think it's very important to not focus on looking for the jobs online. We talked so much in the last round about networking and really getting to know people and having them getting to know you and your brand and what you're all about. And so that's an important way to find out about jobs, because then ultimately people are coming to you and saying, oh, I have this opportunity coming up. I think you would be a great fit. If you're only just sitting around waiting for the jobs to be posted, I think you're going to miss out on a lot. So we are at 125, which technically means we are at the end of round 3 and the end of the round with Jordine, Will, Priya and Christian. According to the schedule, the plan is for them to move over to Slack. I want to just do a temperature check with them. Are you guys able to move over to continue the conversation on Slack? Or I just want to put this out there, is there any chance you might want to stick around just for a few more minutes and answer a few more questions?
I think I'd rather stay in the format we're at rather than trying to switch formats. I had Slack open on another screen, but I can't find it now. Oh.
Okay, yeah. I'm seeing there's a really rich discussion going on Slack. So I think maybe we don't need to add any more mentors to it. So the four of you, if you do need to drop off, please do. But maybe, I don't know, let's just see if we can take a couple more questions. Janisha, do you want to see what we've got there?
Yeah, we have one question on communication styles that you use in different careers. So it would be great if you could elaborate on that.
I think for me, as somebody, I think it was Priya, you mentioned gender. And in one of the earlier sessions, they asked whether or not you needed a doctorate. I can say that when I walk into the Ministry of Education and I say, I am Dr. Jordine Hale, it carries more weight than when I am my usual goofy self with the staff. And I think that the communication styles in it, let me try to explain. The communication styles that I have to switch to in the course of a day between working with the staff, working with the Ministry of Education, working with Home Office, and then we have a whole bunch of technical experts, academics, who help us also as short-term technical assistants. So during the course of the day, I can be going through 5 or 6 different styles, and I'm very conscious about changing that style as I go through the day. And again, that's something I wasn't conscious of. The younger me wasn't so conscious of it, but I will put on the, sorry, there's a helicopter going over the house. I will put on the doctor hat and the doctor coat when I need to with the Ministry of Education or donor partners, that kind of situation. And yet within my staff, I'm myself.
Yes, if you agree, I take it from there. And as I agree, this is a very important skill, in my opinion, that you really have to learn, and you learn it mostly by experience. There is each working environment, and within each working environment, maybe also each project has a sort of formal and informal language, and the way you switch from one to another is really something that can make your success or not. So, and this is something that you can learn through active listening. You have to listen to the others, try to maybe be a bit silent in the beginning and wait for your time, and try to listen to which are the way of communicating that your colleagues and your supervisors maybe are using. And the same is when you are in a higher position and maybe you set the tone. It is very important to use it in a polite way, but also to use the proper language that is needed for the goal that you are trying to achieve. But again, this is something that you learn with the experience. So I go back to the fact that maybe having some experience is really important, because it gives you not only the technical capacity to build a curriculum or whatsoever, but also the capacity to put yourself in a right communication environment and with the right communicational approach.
I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with both of these responses. I just wanted to say, I think, as you know, researchers doing masters or PhDs, I mean, you could also sort of think about it in terms of communicating your, let's say, research, you know, the thing you're working on to different audiences, right? I mean, this is what we have to do all the time. When you're communicating with your advisor, it's very different from when you're communicating with, let's say, a policy audience. When you go and make that first pitch to a policy audience, like I've had so many of these, you know, learnings, let's say, where people are not getting it, you know, and as you know, as you said, it's really this question of, are you actively listening to what they're saying? You know, what is the issue in this conversation as they're asking questions? people are very different depending on the audience you're talking to, and you just need to be aware of this, and you learn as you improve your experience, I think.
If I can just add one thing, one of the most disastrous things I ever was part of was a young researcher who had just recently finished her PhD, and she was coming over to work. At that time it was in Ethiopia, and she was there to teach them about how to do things. And she was talking to a group of men in their 50s and 60s who had been running the Department of Education, the Ministry of Education, for years. And in that case, the communication style that she had been taught as a young academic, of knowing your things and being forthright, understanding your expertise, completely failed in that environment. And they rejected everything she had to say, not because what she said was incorrect, but because her communication style was inappropriate for this situation. So it's reading the room and knowing how much of an authority you can be, and how much of a learner you have to be.
If I can just jump in and maybe take us to the next question. I'm not sure if any of the participants have put this out there, but I think it's so important, so I just want to ask it. Jordine, you had mentioned, the many hats that you wear, being a mother, as well as all of your professional roles. And of course, all of us are more than, only our professional roles. Can any of you speak to how you balance, your personal life and your professional roles? For example, especially if professionally it means, a lot of traveling or moving locations or anything.
Okay, I will start if you don't mind. This
Go
is
ahead.
a very tricky and interesting question, because I spent the last 3 years traveling every second week to Africa and to Asia from Italy. So the answer is I don't know. I don't really know, because it's really something that you have to build from your experience. You have to find a balance that is different every year and in every step of your life. But what is important is, on the personal side, to keep contacts and to be able to continuously keep contacts with your family, because this balance also your professional side of the work. And maybe giving yourself a few very basic rules, 3-4 rules, like I work from this time to this time, or I work 5 days and not 7, or I work in this situation and not in this other situation. Because if you give yourself rules, you can also structure a bit of your life. Otherwise, you can also feel that the work is really somehow attacking you from everywhere. So it's really important to have a few rules that you respect, very few, but the rules that you really that create the structure of your life.
Anyone else want to add anything?
For about 11 years, I did what you were doing, traveling back and forth. And one of my rules was that I could stay away from the home for no more than 21 days. After that, I had to be back. I had to be back on the 22nd day, no matter who was begging what, because it was really important for me to maintain that contact with my kids. And if it meant going to a dress rehearsal instead of the final show, or all of that, trying to schedule my life around their lives, it was tricky, but it was necessary. Another one of my rules was to be home for major religious holidays, because I'm Jewish and they don't fall within the usual holiday calendar. Today's Passover. It was always my rule to be home for the major Jewish holidays. And those kind of boundaries that sometimes to my bosses seemed arbitrary, like, why can't you stay another week? It's like, because that's my That's my line. It's a line in the sand and I drew it, but it's my line and it helps keep me balanced. I think the other thing is to make sure that the work that you're doing is your passion. And so that it's not exhausting. It's exciting to be reading. It's exciting to be thinking. It's exciting to be meeting with these people so that your passion is your work. In West Africa, they call it ginger, to bring ginger to your work, to bring that spicy creativeness. Yeah, just make sure you have a lot of ginger.
Thanks, Jordine. That's really interesting. So, oh, Priya, did you want to jump in on that question?
I was just going to say, again, going back to the gender issue, it is a question of, you know, I mean, these are like, one of the things you're posing here is also about personal communication, about, you know, division of labor, like, you know, who compromises in a relationship, and all of these, you know, more complex questions. It is a difficult thing to, I think, to go after sort of a more development-oriented profession. I think I would just say that careers do evolve, and in the early phase of your career, when you have, you know, so especially if people who have the flexibility, I would urge for more of a, you know, go to the field, figure out something you want to do in the field. I think there's a lot of opportunity that is field-based that could, you know, help you in the future. As, you know, things become more complicated, I think, you know, we all have our own coping mechanisms in terms of the work-life balance. And, you know, it's kind of weird to be talking about travel in a time like this, but it is such a big part of this field that you have to think about this quite seriously. Are you willing, you know, to do this much traveling? I mean, how sort of committed are you to this, I guess? And you know, then it is, as Will said, you know, some of us do more desk-based research work also. I mean, you find different things you can do in this field also.
Okay, we are quite a bit over the time, so I think let's officially wrap this up. I want to be respectful of our mentors' time and let them get on with their lives if they need to. Mentors, if you are able, we would love for you to join over on Slack, and mentees, you can continue to ask questions there. If you're not, no problem. We can also leave the, you know, we want to let everyone kind of move on, but we can also leave this on for a little bit longer. But I just want to thank our mentors, Jordine, Christian, Will, and Priya. This was really interesting, so wonderful. We really thank you for your time and offering all of your insights and guidance. And participants, I want to also thank you for joining us. I hope that everyone enjoyed and learned a lot from this first ever virtual speed mentoring. It was certainly an adventure for us organizing this. That said, I hope that I will see you next year at CIS in person for in-person speed mentoring. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Christian.
Bye, everyone. Good to see everybody.
Bye, Will.